Welcome, everybody, to the 2+2 Pokercast presented by RunItOnce.com. This is Pokercast. What is it? How do you... 459? 459. 459.
I only have a small advantage over you because I was playing poker for 3 days, so I had to hear raise sizes and actually convert them into something my brain could understand.
A lot of French.
It's the only reason that my grade 9 French is currently better than your grade 9
than mine,
French.
yeah.
French.
We are at the Party Poker Live tournament here at the Playground Casino in Montreal for the Party Poker North American Millions. Having a lot of fun. This is great. Terrence, you played the event. We'll talk about that some more. Roscoe and I toured around Montreal a little bit. And,
hello, boys and girls.
Oh, hey. Roscoe's in the house. Today we're gonna have some fun. We're gonna recap the event a little bit, talk about your event and some of the hands that you played, some of the concepts, your overall take on everything. And we're also going to be joined by Mike Noori, who has got the $1,000 McDonald's bet in 36 hours. He's got to eat $1,000 worth of McDonald's food.
Masochistic man.
Yeah, so he's going to join us in a few minutes to talk about his strategy and see what he's going to do here in a couple of weeks when he's under the gun, so to speak. And probably joined by somebody from the Party Poker Live crew to recap quickly the event, and we'll get to the chip leaders and all the other stuff in a little bit.
But before that, we're going to do a 30-minute trip report on the Syrian restaurant.
Right. We went to the top 10 meals of all time, I think, last night. It was fantastic. Great food.
Yeah.
The Syrian place here in Montreal. The food here is fantastic.
Yeah, as everybody says and that everybody expects. Like, anytime you get a super multicultural city with good, like a lot of history behind it, you're going to
find that.
You're going to find that, so.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably an average restaurant for Montreal, and it blew us away.
Yeah.
It was fantastic.
Well, you just randomly walked by it, and then I looked it up online, and I was like, oh, this is like 5-star everything, Yelp, TripAdvisor, whatever. Oh, he must have done some homework, or someone someone local must have told him, or he was in the know, or something. He did. But blind squirrel, acorn.
Found that exactly.
Like that. What other fun things have you done? I've like you mentioned, I've been in this poker tournament, so yesterday was kind of my first day off, really. So.
Well, I'm still in training mode. I'm still trying to drop the weight, so I've been walking around Montreal.
You can do things that don't have Oh, I see. You do some low calorie, calorie burning exploration.
Calorie burning exploration is what I ended up doing. I had a lot of fun. It's Montreal's a great city, and out a couple of nights too. So I had some good fun experiences, and didn't play one hand of poker. Which kind of...
You thought about playing
the main. I brought a bunch of money to play.
You thought about playing the main, which surprised me in a way, because you're not a guy who plays MTTs or even Limit Hold'em, and you thought, was it the overlay that sort of attracted you to the idea that you were thinking of playing?
It was.
Potential for the overlay?
And let's face it, $1 million, when they tag $1 million first prize,
sure.
I don't care who you are, you look at that and go, I can run good in a multi-table tournament, and I thought there might be a chance of an overlay. It's really ambitious guarantee. $5 million in Canada has never been done before, and I thought, well, we'll see if they can get that many people. If not, maybe I'll take a shot.
I mean, even as I was playing on day 1A, and we were looking at the numbers, and the numbers were pretty strong for 1A. I think still most of the consensus was that they weren't going to make it.
Yeah.
And of course, when we had Rob Young on last week, he was like, I don't give a shit if we missed it.
Yeah.
That was effectively his attitude, was he does not give a shit if they have to overlay a bunch of money.
60% of the time, it works
every time.
And pay out a bunch of money, but they ended up smashing the guarantee, really.
1,186 entries.
Yeah.
I think even in their wildest expectations, if they would have gone, wow, we're going to get almost 1,200 entries, I think that would have been ambitious, but they did it.
Right, super impressive.
And the format, we talked a lot, the format of this multiple re-entry has come a long way, and there was resistance even by a lot of people. There still is, because you're paying the juice 3 times or whatever, however many times.
Or you're saying that the pros have too much of an advantage because they're able to buy in, and people don't like having to eliminate the Phil Ivies 3 times or whatever.
But are we comfortable with this format now? I mean, I think it's proven it's
just
successful.
One of these accepted things that people still, I think, gripe about it when they don't like it. But it is part of poker now, so it's going to continue for a while. I mean, you have to think down the line. Is there a probability of something like the World Series main event becoming a re-entry event? And how would that change the dynamic of poker?
Yeah. All right, let's talk about your event. You played. You were going to shoot a few bullets. You weren't.
Yep,
you were going to fire away.
I had 20K wired into the cage, ready to fire. Basically, so the way this works, just recapping it for people who don't remember, but you could potentially fire 2 bullets on day 1. 2 bullets on day 1B, and then you could even fire potentially 2 bullets on day 2. They allowed day 2 entry up until the first break.
So 6 bullets max.
6 bullets max, potentially. And I do know of somebody who did fire
all
6 bullets. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Yeah, I mean, this was, and even if you did the sort of the max late registration, I think you were still coming in with like in the 30 big blind region or something very reasonable. So yeah, it was possible to do that. So I figured my strategy was basically, okay, I'll play 1A if I'm feeling good and I bust before the late reg period ends, I'll fire 2nd bullet on 1A. Then I would be willing to fire 3rd bullet on 1B. And then if I busted that 3rd bullet, I would probably just bind direct on day 2 because the blinds actually rolled back. So the last blind level on the 2 day ones, I think was I want to say it was 30,000. This 1 million starting stack thing threw us off, and then rolled back to 20,000 on the second day.
Right.
But luck, I ran pretty good on day 1, ran decently well, finished with I think 4.8 million on day 1.
Many zeros.
Many zeros. That's far more zeros than I've ever had on a day 1.
You 5x'd your stack. So
5x'd my stack, yeah, which I've done many times before, but I've never had 4.8 million.
Right. That's usually final chip to final table chip
million. It's just like, I mean, it was actually really tough, like even just sort of figuring out like 3-bet sizing.
Did you see a lot of mistakes because of the size?
Yeah, and we'll talk about that later when we get through some hands, but definitely like the first hour of the tournament, I verbal declared every single one, because the chips are like right out of the gate. You're getting, you've got white 500k chips, you've got green 100k chips, you've got red 25k. Like, I don't know what's going on here. So I verbal declared everything for like 3 hours. I didn't make change for anybody unless the dealer verified it. Like, it was. You
know what it strikes me as? It strikes me as similar to poker players playing with props, because it's up to the poker. Yes, it's this insane amount of chips that you're having, but it's up to you to do things correctly.
Yeah.
It adds another element. I mean, a lot of people say, oh, there's no need for that amount of chips, and I get that, whatever. It's all a function of big blinds at the end of the day, but it almost adds another layer of you better be paying attention and doing things properly, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Pay attention.
You better be focused, and that's something I was really worried about. If like I didn't get a good night's sleep or I wasn't paying attention, like it's really easy to miss these things. I think chips should be standardized. I mean, if I were to, I don't know if this is the most important thing, but I think anything that starts with a 25 needs to be green, whether it's 25 or 25,000.
Make
right?
it green.
Like that should be a green thing. Reds should be 5s or 5,000. Just like anything
different
that's a 1 should be white
or
or black. Like I mean, I think these things should sort of be standardized. One of the things here, I mean, this is a very minor gripe about what was overall a great tournament, is that like the 25k chips are red and then the 100k chips are green, and that kind of throws you off a little bit.
Sure.
So, definitely that.
Bitch.
Exactly. But overall, the tournament was great. The dealers here are fantastic. Like, you talk about something like that. That's as hard as it is for the players. It's way harder for the dealers.
Yeah.
Like, they've got to, be able to eyeball the raise sizes immediately. I talked to one of the dealers who was actually involved with training the other dealers on the denominations of these ones.
Okay.
And they did fantastically well. I don't think anybody, like, when somebody moves all in for like 3.9 million and like 7 different colors of chips, that's like a really hard thing to count down.
And you can't make a mistake.
Yeah, you can't make a mistake. It's super important. I don't think I saw any significant mistakes. And they're repeating it in French and English
to
add an extra second layer of complexity on it. So dealers really did a fantastic job here, I felt.
How'd you find your opening table? What was the mix of
I'm glad you asked that. So my opening table, as I mentioned, I bought in directly for 5,000, and so you're expected to get into this random pool, because the way they did this, of course, was they ran satellites, but not in the traditional way.
They called them phase ones. We talked about them on the show, right?
Yeah, they called them phase ones, and you could play them either online or here at Playground if you live locally.
Yep.
And it wasn't a normal satellite where, okay, we're going to get 10 seats, and everybody who, the final 10 of this tournament is going to start with 1 million chips, just like everybody else you basically want to buy in. What you would actually do is you would actually play early on. Maybe you'd start with 100,000 chips. In fact, I think that's what they normally did. And whenever play to end, if you were still in the tournament, that was going to be your day one starting stack.
Right.
So if you finished as a short stack with 200K, you were going to start day one with 200K, or if you just bombed everybody, you could have started with like 4 million. And I think some people did start with over 3-4 million.
Yeah.
So a very interesting format. Our buddy Wes actually brought 2 stacks in.
Oh, did he?
He had a day one stack, which was smaller. I think it was like 600,000 or something like that. And then a day 2 stack, which was like 1.5 million. So he had to think about how to play those. And so I'm expecting to get seated at a table, with a mix of various qualifiers. And of course, everybody was thinking that this is going to be one of the juiciest tournaments of the entire calendar year because they're promoting so many people. They're guaranteeing 5 million. They're satelliting in or phase one-ing in all of these people, both on party and through their local casinos. But I get sit down, and everybody else at my table also just paid $5,000, and a little bit steamed about that off the start. And I thought,
so it was all the people late. Basically the people you were in line with.
The guy who was in front of me in line was at my table, and the guy behind. So that was a little bit upsetting. And I thought you guys need to fix this. Like, this isn't 2005. You got to leave enough seats.
This has been
open.
solved.
Yeah, all you got to do is leave enough seats open so that all the people who buy in directly gets distributed randomly throughout the room. So my starting table sucked, but I was only there for about an hour and a half. I just dumb luck. I got pulled to balance another table that had busted, and I got moved to a fantastic table.
So what was that like?
Immediately. So there's I always hate talking about how bad other people play, so I'll try to be mild with the descriptors. But there was definitely a player who I heard she had won her seat through like a promotion.
Oh, cool.
Or something like that, but like she didn't actually have to play poker to win it. No, she knew how to play poker. She wasn't like clueless about how to play poker. She didn't play real well.
Right. Okay.
There's a lot of sort of calling multiple streets with ace high. Like the second I got moved from this like pro infesta table to this new table, I see like I don't even remember what the board is, but I think it's like King 8-7-5 or something like that, and. I see her leading out for, I want to say like 100,000, and then somebody makes it like 325, and she calls. And this is the only thing I know about this table. Like I'm picking up a hand in the, in the middle. The river's a deuce. She checks, the guy bets, and she shoves all in, and he swears, and he tank calls, and she turns over pocket deuces.
Wow.
And the guy is just like absolutely blown, and the storm's off. And
I don't play well.
The weird thing is that I'm looking around the table and nobody seems surprised by this.
Oh, wow.
And that's how I know things are going crazy. And I was just like, my jaw dropped, and then somebody just looks at me and says, "That's not even the sickest thing that's happened yet." And awesome. So now you know how I finished with 4.8 million on day one. A lot of good.
Was there just gifting you chips?
There was definitely some gifting, definitely some misclicks involved. That also ran pretty good, and there's some definitely interesting spots that I got involved in.
Did the chip denominations work in your favor at all?
Only because I'm just super careful and really meticulous, I think. I was just, like I said, super careful about making sure I knew how much the action was to me, and being careful not to misclick, basically.
Did you see the overbet angle? Did anybody pull off the overbet angle with the chips?
That might have happened. We can talk about
later.
That when we get into the hand
we'll do that later. Structure. What did you think of the structure?
Great. Very, very slow, very deep. I think we even getting to the bubble, we had an extremely long bubble. I want to say it was like an hour long. And even after that very long bubble, I mean, they paused the clock during the bubble, but I think we were still like 50-ish big blinds deep, very deep all the way through. Great structure all the way through. The rollback on day two definitely helped. I think, like I said, 10, 20,000. I think the average chip count going into day two was about 3 million. So wow. I mean, that's 150 big blinds. I mean, that's an awful lot. Sorry, not 75 big blinds, but yeah.
They've got to the final table. They're down to 9. Ari Engel is the chip leader, which I couldn't be happier about. I think Ari's awesome. He has.
Was that my starting table, by the way?
Oh, was he?
That table full of people who bought the table full of people who just bought in for $5K. He was at that starting table.
So he's got what has he got? He's got 200 million, over 200 million.
252 million.
252 million. There is one.
I've never had 252 million chips in a poker tournament.
The funny part is there's 1.1 billion in chips in play.
I was so excited to get like heads up with the chip lead so that I could just say raise to 1 billion. I was just gonna be like, that somebody's gonna get to say that. Like, it's gonna be an effective all-in.
Says it, yeah.
It's gonna be an all-in effectively, but somebody's gonna get to say, I make it a billion.
You have to have like an evil laugh after you say that.
$1 billion.
I mean, even stuff like, on making standard 3-pets to like 1.3 million feels
pretty
fun.
cool, right?
I mean, just be like 1.3 million. All right, let's go.
So, chips aside, he's got about 100 big blinds somewhere in there. I think there are 125,250, 125,000 blinds at this point, and he has.
What you mean by that is 1.2 million.
Sorry, 1.2 million. Yeah, sorry. So he effectively, it's a similar stack to most final tables. He himself, Jean-Pascal Savard. Has 243 million, also
kind
near 100 big blinds.
Basically.
Matt Waxman has 115 million, and Niall Farrell, his short stack, 69 million. He was a chip leader for a long time. So was Scott Montgomery, a Canadian who'd won a bracelet in November 9, 2008, I want to say, somewhere in that range.
Sounds right.
The exciting thing for me is this tournament is this model is now proven for them. For Party Poker Live, we've talked a lot about the concept with Duthie and others at Party Poker, and it took balls to put this guarantee up, and I'm glad they hit it, because you like to see that rewarded by being aggressive and providing the players an environment like this. It's fantastic. This room is amazing. When they break a table, 4 people sweep in, disinfect all the chairs, vacuum, clean the cloth. Everything is spotless.
That's definitely the part that's impressed you the most. You're right.
It's crazy because you've never seen that before.
We're actually, for those of us who are only listening to the audio version and not watching the video version that we're doing, but we're just at a poker table, and I don't feel like I'm going to be sick.
It's completely clean and disinfected. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's been nice. I mean, the service is great. I mean, I don't usually eat while I play poker that much, but I mean the food service, everything looks good. I mean, massage, everything's set up. It's all very well organized, and it's run because I think there's so many poker rooms, and I talked about this a bit with the Rob Young interviews. You're talking about running a poker room for the sake of running a poker room versus like something that's just thrown in the side of a casino, right? Yeah. And so many poker rooms these days are just thrown inside a casino, unless you're talking about like LA.
Sure.
But this is a real poker player's casino, and it's a fantastic place to be. It really, really is.
So the exciting part again is that this is proven now for Party Poker, and hopefully we're going to see. Well, we'll certainly see another one of these next year.
Yeah,
here.
As a player, like sort of playing in this event, obviously I wish there would have been an overlay, because hey, I'll always take more money and fewer people to get through. But from the long-term perspective, it's clear that they're going to be able to do it again, even better, maybe even bigger next time. It's definitely great. And coming up here in Canada, it's geographically, it's a great, like Montreal is a great location. We're not technically Montreal, but because we're so close to the American population centers, they can easily get to here. And of course, the bulk of even the Canadian population is out on the East Coast. And being in Canada, no 30% silliness withholding like on a tournament in the U.S. There's a lot of things really working in the Playground's favor for a repeat event.
Good. Why don't we take a break there? See if we can track down Mr. Michael Noori. And joining us now on the Pokercast is the candidate in the funniest prop bet maybe of all time, the guinea pig, Mr. Michael Noori. Mike, welcome to the Pokercast.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Pretty good. This has kind of captured the attention of the poker world. I know it didn't start out this way for you guys. Maybe give us a little idea of how the whole bet started.
Well, we're in a group thread with all the golfers, and basically, I was trying to make a joke that they were paying too much money for the catering food one night, and then someone came up with said, "Oh, well, he could probably eat $1,000 worth of McDonald's. I mean, he could cater the whole thing for $2,000 worth of McDonald's." Somebody else chimed in, said, "Oh, he could probably eat $1,000 worth of McDonald's," and it kind of took off from there. I mean, it first all started off as pretty much jokes. Then I started doing some research. I researched online. I remember reading an article about when they had the self-ordering kiosk. If you just maxed out everything on the Big Mac, it would come out to $900, and they would just charge you $900 for it.
Yeah.
So, maybe it's possible. I mean, I took it not thinking I was going to win, but that it would just be funny for everyone to see how far I could go at first. But as I researched more, I think it actually is kind of possible. There's different ways to go about it. Maybe some of the ways I win would have to go to arbitration because it might be bending the rules too far. So, yeah, I have a couple ideas in mind. So we'll see how it plays out.
Okay, so the rules are you have to eat $1,000 worth of McDonald's menu food in 36 hours, $200 max on salads, at least $300 on hot foods like fries, burgers, and chicken. $50 has to be burgers. You can drink. You can have drinks, but you can't order them. They don't count. You can't remove things like you can't have a Big Mac minus the bun. And so
I just have like an imaginary Big Mac.
Sorry, you can say that again?
I said you can't really have an imaginary, like I can't have like, no bun, no sauce, no meat. It's got to be as it comes. I got to order it as it comes, but it can add things to it. And I think that's the only way that it's possible to win is basically saying, can I get a side of lettuce? Can I get a side of onion? Can I get a side of tomato? And see how much they charge me for those type of things.
Right. So
because each McDonald's is different. Like, some might be accommodating, some might not be. It might take me 5 McDonald's to find one that's accommodating my strategy. Basically, is what. And I'm not allowed to contact any of the McDonald's ahead of time. So I got to go in there and try and talk to them and see what they can ring up for me. Maybe one of them will say, can I get $1,000 burger and put whatever you want on it? And you just give me a big pile of food in one serving. That would work.
That works. That counts.
It's not right, exactly. So it's not like a food eating contest. It's more of getting McDonald's to come up with some goofy, price to get it done. It's not like I have to eat, there's no stipulation saying I have to eat 200 Big Macs or whatever. That would obviously be almost impossible.
Right. So, okay, the other rule is no blender. You're allowed to throw up. Is it once or multiple? Like, what happens there?
Basically, I've talked with them and they've said, as long as you're not, trying to forcibly puke, it's okay. So, but if I puke, 1, 2, 3 times probably in 36 hours is probably okay. Anything more than that, it's kind of a grayish area.
Okay.
Where it stands right now.
Mike, I got to ask you, I mean, it doesn't sound like this is sort of your first venture into a crazy prop bet land. I have to think that, there's a big mental toughness aspect to this more than just, your ability to be sort of a human trash compactor. Do you consider yourself somebody who's just, kind of an extremist and able to do these kind of things? And are there any examples of crazy shit you've done in the past that might be similar that you can draw on the experience?
Yeah, I have had a couple. I've had weight loss bets I've won. I lost 50 pounds in 4 months to win one. Let's see what else. Oh, I walked home from a golf course 29 miles after playing a round of golf.
That one was awesome. We had Matt on the show to talk about that. You guys were playing golf. You lost a bunch of money, and then you're sitting around after and said,
right.
They offered you
How can I get even?
Yeah.
Right. I said, how can I get even? And they said, you can walk back to the Commerce. Commerce is 28 or 29 miles away. And we had just played a full round of golf, too. So.
But you had to walk through, bad areas of L.A., right? It wasn't, a good, in middle of the night.
Yes. I mean, there were some less desirable areas. It's more it was more industrial. And so I didn't see basically anyone through the bad areas, which was good, but I was running through the bad areas. I was not walking that portion.
29. How long did it take you to walk 29 miles?
I ran some of it. It took me about 8.5 hours. I made it with 30 minutes to spare.
Oh, you had 9 hours?
I had to get back by midnight.
Oh, wow.
Well, I had 9 hours. I did it in like 8.5, I think. Might have been 8:15 or something like that.
That's awesome.
That was over a year and a half ago.
Well, the one I wanted to ask you about was so last year, for everybody knows, there's a Matt Savage puts on a golf tournament every year called the Savage Invitational. Last year we were at Edgewood in Lake Tahoe, and one of the prop bets that I heard you were talking about doing last year was walking around Lake Tahoe in 24 hours. I think you had 24 hours to do it. It's a huge lake, and it's really difficult, and you would have had to run part of it, but 24 hours. That what happened with that bet?
Well, it was 72 miles. The weather actually was my biggest deterrent because I basically could have had 3 months to train for it, and it would have been okay. But the weather and the wildlife was actually a concern.
Really?
So I decided not to do it.
Bears?
I mean, yeah, there's bears, wolves, all that type of stuff was out there. Also, when we were there, the weather was projected to be, I mean, as Adam knows, we were golfing in almost
snow,
freezing temperatures.
Yeah. It was
Yeah,
cold.
it was.
Elevation, too. Also, mile high. That's going to take the oxygen out of you. Yeah.
It would have been tough for sure. Okay, so one of the approaches you were going to take is McDonald's sells these little bags of apple slices, and I've seen these. I think they're like $1.50, and you get like 3.
So the most expensive thing you can get like per gram at McDonald's is like a piece of fruit.
It almost is, right? Yeah, per calorie. So basically, you got to work this out per calorie, right? Like you can only ingest a certain amount of calories. So the dollar value per calorie has got to be one of the things that you look at. And the apple slices is like 3 little slices of apples, and they're actually, I think they're peeled as well. So you only have to eat the actual raw.
They are peeled, correct.
Yeah. So then you can eat, what is it, like 200 bags of these things or something?
Yeah, roughly. I mean, I could probably eat more, but the sugar and the carbs in that altogether, eating all of that doesn't seem as feasible for $500. Maybe probably like $500 worth, probably closer to $200 or $300 worth of apples is what I'll be eating. It depends also on like what type of add-ons I can get at these McDonald's and what prices they'll charge me. Obviously, I'm not going to say charge me $10 for one onion or whatever, but like whatever they have in their POS system, you know, they obviously have codes for all that type of stuff. So whatever the code is for, like, you know, an onion or a tomato slice or a pickle or whatever, I want to get the smallest unit for the biggest price. Like maybe one pickle is 25 cents.
Right.
Or like 2 pickles or 3 pickles is 25 cents. Maybe that's doable that way. So.
Okay, so.
The amount.
Sorry, go ahead. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, I was just going to say the amount of notifications and Twitter notifications, Facebook messages, text messages has been so overwhelming, and like all these people come up with these crazy ideas, but you know, none of them basically have any merit. None of them have seen close to what I discussed with you guys as my strategy.
Well, one of the ones I saw was birthday parties. You can have it's an actual menu item. You can have a birthday party it's meant for kids, but if they charge you $89 to have a birthday party, and that's a menu item, right?
Yeah, that might be stretching it. That's also, you know, I had looked into that type of stuff too, but that's also where I said it would probably have to go to arbitration, and that's probably bending it a little too much.
Right, I see. Okay, so a lot of people, Dan Bilzerian, I think even tweeted about it. He's got obviously millions of followers, and that created sort of a storm of interest. And it sounds like there's $250,000 bet on your making it or not making it already.
Yeah, I mean, I have a very tiny piece of that, but the side action on it is pretty crazy.
Which kind of changes it for you because, like you said, it was kind of a bunch of buddies around doing it for fun, and now you've got maybe you don't have a ton of money on it. You get a couple $100 in, and you just kind of go, that was fun. Fuck it, now I'm done. But now you got, tons of money out there. You gotta You gotta go down in flames.
Right, I gotta try. I'm gonna try.
Yeah.
See what happens. I'm gonna try my hardest, but. if I'm at the $300 mark and not feeling too hot, I might throw in the towel. But, I'm going to try my hardest.
Well, the good part about this for me is after you beat me at the Savage Invitational in Pebble Beach, you beat me by a stroke. I finished second to you. Now I know you're drawing dead for the golf tournament because you're going to feel like crap the whole time.
Yeah, and as you know, I'm not a very good golfer, but I also have a lot of action already booked for the golf tournament based on this bet. So, I'm going to try to, I'm going to have at least one day to recover. But I might need more than that, so we'll see. I have to shoot 88 under on all 4 rounds of the tournament. If I shoot 88 or under every day, I get 24-1 on that.
Wow,
so we'll see how
that's awesome.
Yeah. I'm an 18 handicap, so that's going to be tough, but we'll see how that goes.
For sure. All right, Mike. Thanks so much. Looking forward to when I get down there and seeing how you make out with the bet, and we'll definitely bring you back on and give a quick recap of how it went.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye. Keep going.
That was awesome. This kind of stuff is fun, right?
He wasn't willing to give us his full strategy because he's got some ideas in mind. But that's interesting. I don't know if the other person, the other end of the bet can buy out yet. I guess is probably why he doesn't want to give away the strategy. But it sounds like he's definitely got something up his sleeve. Which I would hope.
This kind of stuff makes it's fun. Yeah, it's not about poker.
It's great he's done his research, though.
Yeah, he's
it's
definitely
really great he's done his research in it. And I never sort of thought about the idea of going around the different McDonald's and kind of figuring out, how much will you charge me for, one extra pickle or, whatever, so it'll be tough.
All right, let's get into some In Case You Missed It, Sir.
How did he miss the open goal? 6 by 4, and he comes up 0.
He missed it.
He's missed it! How on earth did he miss
that? In case you missed it, the poker site PKR Poker has shut its doors. This was one of the very first 3D, I think True Poker and PKR were the first 3D poker sites that you could play at. When you're playing online, the tables were in 3D. And it was fun. It was a place for recreational players because you couldn't multi-table very much because of the intensity of the graphics on the table. So people playing 40 tables at a time would basically ignore the site because it took up too much of their.
That was me. I never played a hand there.
See, right? Yeah, and I think you were there with a lot of people, but there was a lot of people who were happy to play 1-2 tables against a bunch of recreational players. They had run into troubles with France leaving and different countries. Their player base dwindled. They moved to the microgaming network and became a skin of microgaming. And I think last year, I want to say, and then this year they've now decided to shut down due to financial difficulties.
Right.
I think their quote was, they have experienced recent financial difficulties and are in the process of taking professional advice, which makes you ask the question, why didn't they take professional advice before they shut the doors? But I don't know. Anyways, Microgaming released a statement.
Professional advice is expensive sometimes.
True, yeah. I guess if you're having financial issues, maybe that's a difficult decision to make. But Microgaming released a statement saying PKR has repeatedly assured us that player funds are held in a segregated client account for the express purpose of storing such funds in accordance with their license obligations in the United Kingdom and Alderney. We believe this to be true. So basically what PKR has told them is all the players' money is segregated and was not being used for operating expenses. We're closing down because we don't have operating capital. We haven't used the players' funds like other sites.
Some other sites.
That, obviously Full Tilt Poker, they didn't use player fund to operate. So they are doing the responsible thing, not diving into the players' funds. Right. This is, as they say, hopefully this is the case.
It's true. Yep.
And they have all players' funds. But now there's going to be a process, of course, where they go through and either decide to continue as a site, depending on the advice they get, or pay all their players out, hopefully 100%.
Right. Well, it wouldn't inspire a whole lot of confidence if they kind of turned around and said, no, actually, we're good. We're going to give it another shot. Like, come play with us. It wouldn't inspire a lot.
I mean, if they came out and said, look, again, we've got all our players' money over here.
Yeah.
We were short on operating expenses. We've restructured. We've got additional investment. You can see we're very responsible with how we dealt with our business. Come on, I'd be fine with that personally. I mean,
maybe. I mean, it's hard because, like you say, it is a very driven site. So it's hard to even know what, how these people feel about that. If you're talking about a bunch of people who just kind of have like $12 in their PR account, like they're probably not going to bother them. Well, what would sort of bother them, what would be bad is if they kind of shut down and say, oh, actually, you know what, you're actually not going to get your $12 back, and it goes so much far beyond that $12. But it's just that, oh yes, another story of online poker sites shutting down and taking people's monies, it's just
offshore gambling websites.
One of those.
Yeah, no. But anyway, I was encouraged by the release by Microgaming that they are acting accordingly to keeping the players' money separate. I'm pretty happy about that, and hopefully either players get paid out or they find a way to responsibly continue. But we'll keep our eyes on how that goes. In case you missed it, the World Series of Poker has announced new rules regarding the time it takes to act on your hand. And cue the drop of people celebrating. We've been talking about this for a long time. It's almost like you could call it the Will Kassouf rule, right? Or, I guess Will was a different issue with table talking thing. But
like a boss.
It was still. When you talk that much, you do inevitably slow the game down.
Yeah.
So it's sort of they're part and parcel of the same. But I think this is more of a situation where the average thing where like some guy's raised in the field and the pro in the big blind is putting his chip on his cards and looking down and looking around the table and blah blah blah, and like it takes takes way too long to act. It's just a general tanking / stalling.
Balancing his tanking range, right? And this is the issue we've talked about. So this is a rule change for 2017 by the World Series of Poker on the calling the clock rule. And I'm going to read it through here, read through the press release from the World Series of Poker, and we'll stop and talk about different things in the release. So they write, the World Series of Poker is introducing a rule change designed to improve the pace of play and prevent habitual stalling, an issue that has gotten worse, in part perhaps because of the wording of our old rule. Rather than implementing a firm shot clock, we've opted to take a more situational approach, and the rule on calling the clock has been revised. Here are the highlights. Under the previous rule, participants were permitted to call the clock after a reasonable, in quotes, reasonable amount of time had passed, and 2 minutes was defined as the minimum reasonable amount of time. That 2-minute guideline has been removed. Okay, so let's talk about the reasonable amount of time. When we talk about players balancing their tanking range, and this is it's not a joke. Literally, there's many players who do this. They want to take the same amount of time when they know they're going to fold than when they have a decision to make, because they don't want you, when you're in a hand, to know if they're auto folding or if they've got this decision to make. So what they do is they say, I'm going to take this amount of time. So 2 minutes, theoretically, every time you have cards and it's on you is not
that's leading to like multiple 10-minute hands.
Right. So. And this is I'm really happy that they've gone ahead and done this, because under the old rules people could do this.
Well, first I'll tell you, I've played the World Series every year since like 2003, 4. I didn't even know that 2 minutes was the minimum reasonable amount of time.
That's a long time.
I never even considered that. I never even sort of thought this. And the thing is that, like, I think most poker players know what is a reasonable amount of time sort of under the circumstances, right? There's a very different reasonable amount of time when it goes, bet shove on the river than when it's like opened on the button.
3-bet.
Yeah.
And now you're in the small blind.
Yeah, exactly. Like that. Those are very... maybe then, because like you could have like 10s, 9s, whatever, some middling hand. But like when somebody just opens on the button and the small blind folds and the big blind, like you should already know like pretty darn quickly what you're gonna do. So like big difference there.
And one of the things is players don't like to look at their cards until it's their hand, and I've seen a lot of players do this. Because they don't want to give off tells in
advance, which I think is okay if you as long as you act reasonably quickly once you've done that.
Right. To continue, the 2-minute rule, the 2-minute guideline has been removed. Participants may now call the clock at any point if they feel a participant at the table is taking longer than is reasonable for the game situation. When a floor person initiates a clock, so this is a player is called over the floor man, the participant will be given anywhere from 0 to 30 seconds plus a 10-second countdown. The exact amount of time will be up to the discretion of the floor person. This is a reduction in the amount of time given for the clock. So before it was a minute. You had a countdown from a minute. Now it's...
A minute and
10...
I think it was just a minute with the last 10 seconds being counted out loud. Yeah.
Right. So now this is a situation where...
It's essentially anywhere from 10 to 40 seconds now.
Right.
Yeah.
And I have this part bothers me a little bit because what this is going to do is it downloads a wide amount of discretion to many, many different floor people. Now you got to remember the World Series of Poker. Let's take the Millionaire Maker, for example. The entire place is going to be packed.
Yeah.
There's going to be
you have a ratio of maybe 1 floor man per 20 tables or something.
And they're run ragged. Yeah. These guys are working their tail off, dealing with multiple situations. Mm-hmm. They're in a hurry to get anywhere. They have no, and they're only human because they're getting run off their ass. Yeah. They're going to have no patience for deciding exactly what's correct for each time. I can envision a situation where a guy runs over and goes, okay, you have 10 seconds, boom, let's go. Knowing what's going on.
I don't think that would happen, but the issue is more that I think even just getting the attention of the floor man,
it's going to take a while.
It takes a really long time. I trust the WCW floor man not to be able to come over and sort of understand what the decision is, or to ask the dealer about how long has it been, or like I said, he can look and see if this is a pre-flop situation, and
right.
If it's a pre-flop situation, are there like 5 people all in and some crazy shit's going down, or is it just a basic heads up obvious situation, or is it like a pot on the river that's like between 2 big stacks involved, and you should give this guy a little bit more time. I do trust the floorman actually to make that. My issue is that it's just the fact that there's so much variance in just flagging down a floorman, right? And it just like that's not the a lot of the times you talk about something like the Millionaire Maker, floormen are also just running around doing other floorman shit. They're balancing tables, they're making rulings. There's a lot of stuff to do. They're making sure the big pots get counted correctly, and so it's not going to be that easy to get. What if 2 adjacent tables both call the clock? You got to kind of go to the first
one clock first. So
count that guy down, and then the other guy in the second table's got like a minute and a half because this guy's still working on the first table.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, it would be better if the dealers, in theory, were given discretion to like here at Playground. Actually, speaking of the Playground, the dealers, if somebody calls for a clock, the dealer does it. The dealer actually counts down the clock, so he just kind of in his head goes does it. I think he might actually even have a timer in his clock. But
a superb choice.
But yeah, it makes things a lot. But the quality of the dealers at the World Series is quite poor in general compared to any major,
especially in big fields.
Yeah, especially in big fields, and because you literally have dealers who have never dealt poker before at ever dealing the World Series before. So it's hard to give them the extra responsibility too. So I don't think that they can give that responsibility to the dealer just because the quality of the dealers at the World Series isn't good enough.
Continues, if a participant requests a clock, floor persons have the right to not initiate a clock at that time based on game situation. This is intended to prevent abuse of calling the clock. The floor person may then initiate a clock once he or she deems an appropriate time has passed. So if you have a situation where it's nonstop clock,
right.
Guy can come over and say, and that's fine. That seems like a reasonable
Somebody's
thing.
Just doing it for a vendetta or something like that.
Yeah. Floor persons have the authority to issue a clock without prompting from a participant. Participants who appear to be deliberately stalling the progress of the game or frequently call for a clock unnecessarily will be subject to penalty. This rule is intended to discourage stalling or taking unreasonable amount of time for straightforward decisions. Participants.
So hang on, I'm going to stop you there. The most important thing, the thing that gets to the crux of this is straightforward decisions. This rule is intended to discourage stalling or taking an unreasonable amount of time for straightforward decisions. And that's really the biggest problem.
That's 99% of the issue.
In poker right now. Like, for the most part, nobody's complaining, guys are taking too long to call on the river when a guy shoves 2x pot on a 4-flush board. Like, that's not the issue. The issue is it's raised in the field. It's folded around to the big blind. The big blind puts a chip on his cards. He looks down at his cards. He looks at the guy. He looks at his stack. He looks at the other guy's stack. He grabs. He wants to make a re-raise, so he grabs exactly 3.25 times the amount of chips he has. He drops it into the pot 1 inch in front of him silently, and then the other guy calls. And then they deal the flop, and the guy waits 15 seconds and checks. And that's the problem that we're talking about. This is not the thing. And the thing is, this clock calling rule, while I applaud everything they're doing here, it doesn't resolve that problem, because unless you have a floor man standing there going, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, which you're never going to have unless it's the final table, this is still a problem. There's nothing in the rules that solves this exact problem of people playing slowly for straightforward decisions. Now, it says in the bullet point above, if you're deliberately stalling the progress of the game, you'll be subject to a penalty. I don't know that there has ever actually been a penalty issued in a major poker tournament for people playing too slowly. Has anybody ever been given an orbit? If I were to ask you to guess, so let's say all the $1,000 tournaments that have been run in the last year, $1,000 and up tournaments that have been run in the last year, how many hands do you think have players been penalized for taking too long?
0.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking this is I would take the under on 2 for sure.
Yeah.
The thing is that people have to be...
Well, I mean, stuff happens before that gets to there, right? I mean, the guy gets warned and then he speeds up or whatever.
But he doesn't really. Until somebody actually gets a penalty, you're not going to... He's going to go from glacially slow to just quite slow. Right. And then you have the floor man have to make this decision. Okay, is this slowness a tolerance? But we all it's like the old obscenity rule. We all know it. We all know stalling when we see it. We all know slow play when we see it. And it's just so painful. But if they do start giving out penalties, then I'll be the first to change my tune. If I would really like to just see this sort of end to this kind of ridiculous, making sure you do exactly the same thing every time and putting out chips as slowly as possible kind of nonsense. But it's the kind of thing that this rule as written doesn't quite get rid of.
Participants are encouraged to call the clock if another participant is habitually or repeatedly slowing down the game. So they're encouraged to call the clock,
right?
Which is different in the past. Now, and the other thing about this rule,
the difference between being encouraged and having the right to call the clock, right?
So this changes the etiquette, it seems, about calling the clock, because it was always an aggressive.
It's kind of a
thing.
taboo. Yeah.
It was like, oh, you're calling the clock on me? Screw you, buddy. That kind of thing. You're a jerk. Why are you doing that? Yeah. You came off. If you called the clock on somebody, and I know you don't give a shit because you'd do it if it was necessary, but a lot of people won't because they don't want to be targeted maybe by everybody at the table.
And it still is very much the case. So I mean, there was a hand that we played on day 2 at the Playground, and it was a tough decision for the guy, and he was taking a while, and I had decided sort of in my head that if one more minute goes by, I'm going to call the clock on this guy, and before I could do it, somebody else actually did, and what he said was okay, I'll be the jerk and I'll call the clock, and then sort of 4 people, including me, sort of piped up and said yeah, I was going to do that. I was waiting for this. I was waiting for another minute. This guy was just saying I was going to wait till the clock said 30 seconds or whatever. So we all sort of had that in our mind, but kind of nobody wanted to be the first guy, and that's still a problem going forward. But again, the problem is not major decisions. The problem is this habitual stuff that you can't call the clock for, because if anybody even took you shouldn't take 10 seconds to open the pot ever.
Right.
That if you're the first guy in the pot, that should never ever take 10 seconds. And people are doing that. Even if you're the second guy in the pot, if somebody's opened and you're just deciding whether to 3-bet, that should rarely take more than 15 seconds. 15 seconds is a really long time.
Yeah.
In
have your opening ranges down. As the dealer's dealing your cards, look at your position.
Well, okay.
Have your ranges down.
And here's another thing. Here's an argument that I keep reading. So John Duthie has a new idea, which we can talk about in a second, which is separate, but about speeding up the game. And another thing I keep reading is, casual players are going to hate this, because they're going to feel under pressure. They're playing a big blind. You're going to drive these casual players away. It is never the casual players who are consistently slowing down the game. It's 10% of the time.
Right.
and these casual players are the guys who don't have their ranges down and who don't know like what they're going to do in all these circumstances, who are like generally confused, but they're sort of winging it because like poker's a fast game and that's the way they're used to playing in like at home or in their small stakes games or whatever. Like
they're going to play the speed of the table.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
They're not used. They're actually not used to like this kind of 30-second tank, super serious guy in a hoodie, really super deliberate action. It's always these pros, and consistently pros younger than 30, often from Europe, like really just being super insanely deliberate when they already know what they're going to do.
Yeah,
and that's really just
okay. I'm going to read the new rule.
Okay,
this is the new rule. Calling the clock. Once a reasonable amount of time has passed and a clock is called, floor people, in their sole discretion, may give the participant an additional 0 up to 30 seconds to make a decision. If action has not been taken when prompted by the floor person, there will be a 10-second countdown followed by a declaration or stopwatch alarm. If the participant has not acted before the declaration or alarm sounds, the hand will be dead. Rio, in its sole and absolute discretion, reserves the right at any time to invoke a clock or speed up the amount of time allotted for a clock. Any participant intentionally stalling the progress of the game or unnecessarily calling the clock will incur a penalty in accordance with Rules 40, 113, 114. So, sole discretion is the phrase I see in there, which goes to the floor person. Yeah. So there's no, call Jack over here. I want to see Jack, which you see a lot when there's an issue at a table and some pro is pissed off at the result he gets from the floor person. Call Jack. I'm not doing anything until Jack gets here.
Yeah.
Well, that's done, which is great for Jack for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And it should, for things like calling the clock, like it's not like if it's a really complicated ruling and like then calling Jack is like a really
right.
Like
if there's 17 ramifications.
If there's a lot of really crazy esoteric situation that nobody's ever heard of, then you probably could call Jack.
Right.
But I think the floormen even know when they may be out of their pay grade in that circumstance. But for just looking at the board and looking at the two stacks in play and going like, okay, you get 40 seconds. I think that's well within the pay grade of the floor guy.
All right, interesting. We'll see how it develops. John Duthie, you said had some ideas.
So Duthie, so he just put out an idea on Facebook, and his basic idea was, hopefully we can grab him to talk about this, is that every player will get a chip in their stack, so a different color chip, like
indigo.
Yeah, sure. An orange or indigo oversized chip in their stack in addition to their tournament chips.
This is like the all-in chip that remember at the World Series of Poker.
Any player can throw in this chip at any time, and anybody else is making a decision. Once 3 chips have crossed the line or been thrown in, then a 10-second clock gets put on that person. Wow. So that's the idea. So basically, like 3 people have to agree that enough time has passed, but then it's only 10 seconds, right? And so that speeds up the game quite quickly. And his sort of idea behind this is to sort of say, look, nobody likes being the guy to call the clock, sort of.
But you still end up being the guy, the third guy who throws the chip.
I was thinking the first guy is kind of the thing, because I would think what was happening, and it'll be interesting to see if this ever becomes a reality, is like, people will sit around and nobody will throw in that first chip, and as soon as that first chip goes in, then like 2 more will kind of go. Like, and nobody wants to be the first guy. But you might be right. Nobody wants to be the third guy. Maybe once the first 2 go in, then there's a lull. I'm not sure. I think that's a really interesting idea. He also talked about coupling it with time bank chips. So if the clock is called on you by the 3 other people, you'll be able to toss some more chips in. I like that idea. I think it's fun. I don't hate any idea in theory, really. I just want them to try out new stuff and see what works, because the way the game is going now is not
the
good.
shot clock does seem like it would be really difficult to standardize. It would be expensive because you're going to have clocks at every table.
No, it's not really. You just use egg timers. That's what they do in Australia and in EBT.
Right.
They just use it like a dealer has an egg timer. But again, it goes to the competence of the dealer. EBT dealers and Crown dealers and Aussie Millions, which is the 2 places that I've played with a shot clock, they're all very competent. And for the World Series, it's hard. Like the deal, these
dealers
are barely reading the board. Like they've barely learned to read the board, much less operate on that.
All right, let's move on. In case you missed it, Rafael Sorrentino wins the PokerStars Championship Monte Carlo main event. He won 466,000 euros. of a $3.5 million prize pool. So I'm doing a little bit of research on this, and I'm over at Poker News, and I'm looking, because Poker News always usually posts the prize pool, the amount of entries, and who won, and the finishing order. Well, for some reason, they didn't publish the amount of entries. They did everything else, but they didn't put the entries in. And I'm thinking, why? And I'm looking all over the site trying to find out how many entries they had, because that's obviously an interesting topic about what kind of, we're talking about the PokerStars Championship, the change from the EPT, how popular are they running into issues, but they wouldn't post on Poker News in the normal area the total number of entries. I since found out that I think it was a little over 700.
Well, once you figure it out by the prize pool?
Yeah, but I mean, do I got to sit here and do math and divide, into 3.5 million? It's just weird that they, obviously they're not ecstatic with the number, and maybe PokerStars said to them, please don't put the number of entrants out there. I don't know. Or maybe it was just an oversight, and I'm looking into things that maybe weren't there. But 725 entries. Last year, I think there was over 1,000, so this is a pretty big decline from last year in Monte Carlo for the $5,000 event. If you had to guess, without looking at the results, how many Canadians were in the top 75 of the main event, and how many Americans were in the top 75? How many would you say?
I mean, you're baiting me with the question, because it's obviously a weird, disproportionate number. But I mean, if I were to answer this straight up, and you were just to ask me, and I forget the fact that you're asking me the question because there's an interesting result. So are Canadians people who live in Canada, or people?
They have a flag next to them on the Hendon Mob.
Oh, that doesn't say Canada. That doesn't mean shit, because you got so many Canadians that live in all.
I think it's fairly close.
That's really hard. So okay, tell me. I assume you're looking at the list. Are most of the Canadians people with Canadian flags like actual Canadians, or are they just dudes who live in Canada? Okay, they play on poker. So I would guess that Americans would outnumber Canadians like 2.5 to 1 in most circumstances. Okay.
So how many would you say? If you had real numbers.
So in the final 75.
Top 75.
Stupid number.
Final 75. I mean, without you having prompted me, I would probably say something like 25 Americans and 10-ish Canadians.
1 Canadian, Daniel Negreanu, and 2 Americans in the top 75.
Wow. Team North America getting
Team
hammered.
North America not there.
Yeah.
I mean, not getting hammered. I just don't think they were there. I think they were here.
This was definitely a big competition for them.
And it's amazing, because they put this tournament up against one of the flagship tournaments of the PokerStars calendar, the Monte Carlo tournament.
Yeah.
And we're head to head here with a $5 million guaranteed. And
you look at all the big names that were in this room and in the starting field. They also had a 10K. I mean, that's the thing. Like, a lot of they weren't big events here. I mean, they did run the 10K high roller here, but considering what they run in Monte Carlo and places like that, much bigger events over in Europe, that says something, that people aren't necessarily willing to travel to Europe to play poker when there's something good in their backyard.
If they get an option,
a little bit closer.
All right.
Scoop also, maybe.
Scoop,
maybe people getting situated for Scoop. Yeah,
for sure. We're going to take a break there. We're going to come back after the break. We got some mailbag. We got a whole bunch of hands from your tournament that we're going to go through. You're listening to the 2+2 Pokercast, presented by RunItOnce.com. More right after this. Welcome back to the 2+2 Pokercast, presented by RunItOnce.com. All right, second segment. We're going to jump into what's left of the mailbag. By the way, we need lots more emails. We're running through these. We had a ton, but we're doing a couple shows here back to back and haven't got many, so we're going to clean it up now.
And now,
That right there is the mail. Now let's talk about the mail. Can we talk about the mail, please, Malcolm? I'm dying to talk about the mail with you all day, okay?
Mailbag. Email number 1.
Justin writes in, first of all, a terrible start to an email. There's no distance from Kells in
Do you think I care?
Funny increments, and there's no passage about how great we are at all. This terrible email, Justin. But anyway, we're going to read it. My buddy wanted to buy a piece of my cash game action, 25%. It seemed clear to us that he would get 25% of my wins or pay me 25% of my losses. We never discussed the topic of bad beat jackpots or high hand bonus. If these terms were not agreed upon, what is standard? Is the bad beat jackpot or high hand bonus subject to the 25% split without any expressly agreed upon terms? What about comps earned while playing? T.
if not expressly agreed, yes, the bad beat jackpot and high hand bonuses are absolutely part of it. When you pay rake, you're paying to the bad beat jackpot and the high hand bonus, and therefore your backer is also paying that rake effectively. Comps, I'll say no. I'll say comps, those are yours to keep pretty much. I think that's reasonably fair. But the bad beat jackpot and high hand bonus, definitely you owe your backer for that one, in my opinion.
I'm going to disagree with you. I completely agree that the bad beat jackpot and the high hand this is no brainer. I don't know why this is a question. This is absolutely part of the deal.
This is money that you win playing poker.
You were playing poker and you won it, and as you pointed out, the backer is also paying the rake that goes to these things. So he's certainly, and I don't know that you would ever have to even agree upon that. I think that's just part of it.
Right.
Comps, I feel also should be, again, because you get.
I guess it depends on the nature of the comps. I mean, it's like if it's
half a massage or something.
Yeah, exactly. Like if it's like one of these places where you only get like food vouchers and stuff like that, then it's like, well, really, like do you really need to like get the $7 buffet or whatever? Yeah. But if it's like convertible to points because it's like a major program, then I can definitely see
that's
an
what
argument.
I meant. Yeah.
If it's convertible to cash, then
because it's similar, the same thing as the other thing. All right,
you're getting raked back.
Email number 2.
Sam's got it right. He says, love the show. Thanks for the hard work. I had an idea for tournament structure. What if you had a single tournament where people could buy in for different amounts, but everybody starts with the same amount of chips and play against each other? The players at each buy-in would all be playing for only the prize pool to which they contributed, even though the number of players who bought in for each amount would be different. This would be an interesting and fun way for recreational players to play against pros. It would create brand new situations where some of the players on the lower buy-ins are in the money, but others are not. In these situations, there'd be an asymmetry of optimal strategy between the two classes, but no asymmetry of advantage, because you're only competing for money against the members of your own class who are all identically situated with respect to that asymmetry of strategy. The same point would be true at
Glad you're reading this one, by the way.
At every stage of the tournament, but weirdest, funnest when different people are in and out of the money. This quirk would only be possible if everybody knew who was in which group by way of a colored C card or some other marker. As an alternative, you could hide that information and have the fun of not knowing what your payout is until you're bust. For example, you could be 5th, but be the first place $5,000 player. So first case in the higher buy-in. I'm imagining this as a WSOP event, and I think you would need the buy-ins to be close enough to attract a large enough field for each tier. So something like a $1,000, $5,000, $10,000 event would be ideal. Thoughts? I know I'd play it for 1K.
Can I go?
Yeah.
So I think this would be a logistical nightmare.
Yeah.
And I think playing it would be even tougher because
math is idiotic.
Yeah. So raise, shove, and then you've got to look and see what level that guy's playing. You know, like, is he playing for the 10K? Do I need to knock him out? Do I care if he's playing for the 1K? I care a lot less about marginal situations. Like, it just makes playing the tournament really slow because people are going to want to take in all those different, ramifications. And you think you have slow issues now. Imagine a tournament here where people are trying to figure out exactly what's optimal every time you run into a situation like that.
I have a concern that's definitely, I think, the most practical one. My concern is different, and it's essentially cheating. It would be very trivial for you to enter the 10K and me to enter the 1K, and if we get the same table, I just dump chips to you.
Your stack, yeah.
I just dump chips to you. So that the asymmetry of the chips is probably
is another issue.
Anything.
Yeah.
So it's a fun idea.
It's a good idea, but I think that's
Everyone gets their own chip set.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed.
Email number 3.
Angry Bobby writes, hey guys, I was playing in an Underground 2-5 game in Brooklyn and wanted to talk about a hand that occurred. I don't know Ian the dealer, but these games can be quite juicy and have consistently beat the rake over the years. A little backstory, the villain here is a talker and gets under a lot of people's skin, but he's a solid player, and I'd say we're the best 2 players at the table. I played with him maybe 5 or 6 times over the years, but I kept to myself, and I don't think he remembers me. Fairly early in the night, I get aces in early position, and after a scary board that brings a flush draw, I check, and the villain bets half the pot of 75. I reluctantly call. Villain turns over his flush, and I toss my cards towards the muck. He stops the dealer and asks to see my cards. Dealer looks at him, I look at him, and he gives a nod. Dealer reluctantly turns over my aces quickly and throws them back into the muck. I clarify with the dealer that one only has to be dealt into a hand to request to see muck cards at a showdown, and he explains that's correct. I turn to the villain and tell him he better be prepared to show every time now. He calls the floor over and asks if this is true, and the floor explains that yes, it's the rule. He should know the rule. He asked it already. A few hands later, a showdown occurs in a hand that Neeler was involved in, but he asked to see the muck cards. The dealer looks at him and says, "Don't do this." The floor comes over and asks everybody to relax, and he states that if I'm going to ask him to show, then his only recourse is to ask everybody to show. I state that I won't ask him to show to keep the game friendly, but that what that did was completely against poker etiquette, and he knew it. He just didn't care. Stopped short of calling him a douche. And now he won't give up. He states that he's an online player and didn't know this was frowned upon. I tell him he's lying. He says that everybody knows this. Blah, blah, go back and forth. I guess that's the backstory. Here it's a hand. I want to say that I'm not steaming here. It's about 2 hours later now, and while I'm upset that I wouldn't let something like that affect my play, I'm in the small blind to look down at 2 jacks. One limper in middle position raises to 15, and the villain in the cutoff makes it 40. I decide to call. Big blind folds, limper folds, and the initial raiser folds, so we're heads up. We both have about 700 in front of us when the hand is dealt. A guy across the table who I've wanted to drink 7 Coronas, I've watched drink 7 Coronas in 3 hours, announces, "Here we go, jerk off versus guy who hates jerk off," which is, I love that guy. That's funny. And I love this. Hoping I can flop big and use the fact that everybody thinks I'll overplay. And the flop comes Jack 10-5 rainbow. I check, villain announces 50, and before he can even count out his chips, I throw 6 greens in, which we know is 150, and villain takes the bait and calls. The turn's a queen. It's now queen, jack, 10-5. He says, "I hate this card, hate it, hate it, hate it." I check, and villain is putting on the biggest Hollywood I've ever seen. After about 30 seconds, he looks at me and I explained that I've already checked. He underbets 120, and I call. I'm almost positive that I'm beat. The river's a brick, and I check, he shoves. I tank, sure that I'm up against queens or ace-king, but I call and villain turns over ace-king. I look at the dealer and say there's no justice. So is there anywhere I can fold? T, do you want to go with that?
Yeah, that was a long way to get to that story. So the first thing about this whole, I'm not sure if there's a question in the whole part about the asking to see the hands. Or if this is all just it's one of those things where, you know, it could turn the game really sour by asking to see everybody's hand. And you know, he's an online player lying. He says he didn't know it, whatever. I mean, you're just going to run into these people. You've run into them. I've run into them. It happens.
It's the same thing as incessantly calling the clock.
Yeah, or whatever it is. Yeah, it's just anti-etiquette stuff.
Okay, so, you know, I just want to recap the hand real quick.
Sure.
So there's a limp, there's a middle position raise to 15, there's a 3-bet to $40, there's a call with 2 jacks, and we're heads up to the flop with about 100 in the middle. It goes jack 10-5, goes check, $50 and
150.
Yeah, check 150 and call. The turn it goes check and 120 and call. And the river's a blank, and it goes check and jam for, I mean, I guess it would
500
be 500. Yeah, that's a very, very tough spot. I think, you're going to be against queens and ace king and
well, what hands do you beat? What's he gonna shove with there? 8-9. Effectively, maybe is about the only hand that he's going to shove there. 2 queens, you know, again, you're beat. But what hands do you beat? 10.
He's not value betting aces or kings here
very often.
So
especially
I mean, if you're a clever player, like maybe you can
fold the river.
No. I'm saying, like, if the villain is like exceptionally clever, maybe he's going to do something like play kings this way. You know, the kings are essentially the blockers.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think most Hold'em players don't play that way. So I think this is a fairly safe fold on the end.
Yeah, I agree. All right, that's going to do for the mailbag this week. Let's get on to some Ross/T-Chan report.
Good old Roscoe. Sure glad he's all right.
Listen, boy, you gotta pick your spots good. You gotta make hay while the sun shines. Hey, good. You dipstick!
It's time for a Roscoe report.
Oh, they cut off the air horn.
Cut it off.
Not for the T-Chan report.
Not for the T-Chan report.
It doesn't happen.
All right, so these are going to be some hands from Terrence's Party Poker Million North America event and some concepts, too.
Yeah, I played a bunch. So, I was thinking about, hands and concepts, obviously, during the downtime. I was pretty
We should say you went into day 3. Mm-hmm. Busted in day 3, right?
I busted in day 3, I think, in 74th or something like that.
74th, so you cashed.
Yeah, I did cash in the event. Got to play, on a lot of interesting tables, a lot of tough tables, a lot of softer tables that I mentioned. So a lot of time to think about things. And one of the things that was interesting, and by the way, big shout out to, of course, the sponsor Run It Once. I mean, I watched a few videos before I went, but it was mostly... and obviously a lot of the videos were great, but it just got me thinking about poker again and just sort of reminded me sort of how to think about poker. So I'm glad I really did some video study before this. So when I was playing through this tournament, one thing that kept constantly showing up was sort of some weird sizing errors that were made by players that I otherwise thought were quite good. And we talked a little bit about this, the chips being weird, 100K chips right out of the gate and stuff like that. They may have led to misclicks. There was a hand where, I had, I think, something like 9-7 on a board of 6-5 XX, and my opponent bet like 1/12 of the pot, so I basically just had a gut shot and there was already a flush on board, so I would have folded to like any reasonable size bet, but he bet like a one big blind, and I called.
By a good player.
By somebody who seemed to know what he was doing. I wouldn't say,
okay. Somebody who had a clue.
Ross, edit that part out, because I don't want to say that he wasn't a good player. So,
okay.
But anyway, it was a pretty substantial misclick, and the river came in 8, and he made a huge bet, and I called, and so I took a very large pot off of him, and a pot that he shouldn't have. And I see some other stuff too. I have another I have a friend who played the tournament who I think made a really big mistake. For example, in this hand, it's 12-24 with a 3K ante. My friend here opens for 75,000. He gets 3-bet by somebody in position to 220,000, which is obviously great when you have aces. He's pretty happy about that.
Yep.
And he makes it 520 out of position, and that's laying like 8-3 odds.
Guy can't fold anything
with position, and the average stack is 80 big blinds deep. So I want to talk real quick about, if you're listening to this, sort of you're a beginning intermediate player, like, when is it okay to lay odds in a tournament? Like, when you have a big hand, and when is it not to? So when you're playing a no limit hold'em tournament, I think most no limit cash game players sort of understand this, because cash games are deeper and like you get punished a lot more. But I want to talk about this in tournaments, because you'll see this in tournaments where people make really small re-raises, and maybe because intermediate players don't necessarily know when to do this or why people are doing it, they think it's kind of the right thing to do all the time. So
what they're trying to do is get their opponent to flop some marginal hand that they're going to lose all their chips with, a top pair. Like, let's say they raise with king queen and they want them to call and flop a queen while you have aces and lose all their stack, right? I mean, that's the...
Well, no, because I don't think the good players are doing that. I think because that would make them incredibly easy to hand read. Basically means anytime they have a small raise, that means they have a big hand. So I definitely don't think that people are doing that, but I think they are very balanced. I think these very good players are very balanced in these spots. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, like, when is it okay to lay people odds pre-flop and when is it not okay. So I think it's okay to lay people better odds when you're in position. So if the cutoff opens and you've decided to 3-bet the button, I think you don't have to make it like 3.5 times their raise. You can make it a much smaller raise here. So for example, if you're playing 100, 200 and the guy opens for 500, I think it's fine to make it 1,200 behind them. You're in position, then I think it's fine. You wouldn't make it generally 1,200 from the small blind, with a few exceptions. But because you'll be playing the rest of this hand in position, I think it's okay to do that. It's okay to lay odds against very weak players, because they just kind of play very straightforwardly. They play their hands in a way that by the river you'll kind of be able to figure out what it is. The pot is bigger, and so you'll be able to just make better decisions. Similarly, it's okay to lay good odds if you're a very good hand reader, okay? And hand reading doesn't mean putting some, like, doing the Daniel Negreanu doing like you have pocket eights kind of thing and looking cool on ESPN. It just generally means like, okay, he has about this frequency this often on this board, and what does he have and not have just based on the way that he's played this hand. Another spot where you might want to lay good odds is if you want to play like a high variance style on a day one. So for example, we talked about this being a re-entry tournament. A lot of people trying to build up big stacks in this tournament. So making small 3-bets is a good way of doing that. You might make small 3-bets with hands that you would normally actually just flat with. And that is just a way of building the pot, right? Because obviously if you've opened for 200,000 and I make it 350, you're continuing with your entire range. So what I've just done is making the bigger, made a pot bigger. And it's okay to lay good shots, good odds. Lastly, like if the stacks aren't deep. So if you're 20 big blinds deep, you don't have to make nearly as big a 3-bet as if you are 90 big blinds deep. So you shouldn't lay odds if you're playing against strong opponents. You know, the reverse is true if you're out of position or if your hands has sort of reverse implied odds. But again, I want to be careful. Like, you know, just because your hand has bad reverse implied odds doesn't mean you should bomb it. So you see these players make this mistake. They make these like huge 4x bets with ace king, and then when they have aces, they just make like a small re-raise, and then they essentially play their hand face up. So that's just a general concept, and that might come up once or twice in some of these hands. I don't know if we're gonna have time to get through them all. This is a little video recording, keeping us tight, right. Keeping us ship tight. So on day one, I played a hand at 4,000, 8,000 with a 1,000 ante. This may be about I've been at this table for about a couple hours, maybe 3 hours in the tournament overall. I'm in the small blind, and the big blind next to me posts a 25k chip as the big blind because he's all out of small chips. So remember I said it's 4 and 8,000. And now
menu zeros.
The lady on the left opens under the gun for 75,000 and it folds around the table.
Because she sees the 25.
Because there's a $25,000 chip on her right, and so a standard raise if the 25k big blind is 75k. Now we don't know this for sure, right? She could be very aware of 4k, and that's when you asked me before, like did
she could be 9xing?
She could be 9xing.
If you had to assign the probability to her thinking she was 9xing and 3xing, what would you
I don't know. Like, I mean, I think it's more likely than not that she misclicked, but I really don't know about how. What do you think it is?
I think it's probably mostly the fact that she sees the 25 chip.
Yeah,
and is
I think most of the time that's what happens. Just in our experience with live poker. So it's folded around to me with 2 red 8s, and so
in the small blind, and you got to call a 9x.
Yeah, exactly. Now I have to call this much bigger raise. I mean, it's clearly correct. I would much rather call a 3x raise and just try to flop a set on an under the gun raiser, but that's not what happened. And so I call it. So all of a sudden we have this weirdly inflated 150k plus. I mean, we have like 160k pot at 4k, 8k
for one raise.
Yeah, for one raise. And the flop comes king 4 with 2 diamonds. I check, and now she bets 125, which is an appropriate, essentially sized bet. I think this is actually kind of a close decision. So
wow, really?
I mean, this. If she hasn't realized, like,
I guess you would have to. Have you had any experience with her? Do you have?
I don't have a lot. I mean, she's been talkative. She's played hands, but she hasn't turned any hands over. So I haven't gotten a really good line on it. I mean, I think definitely. I definitely lean towards a call. I mean, I think folding is really hard here, but it's starting to actually look like the first raise might have been on purpose, but I'm really not sure at this point.
Okay.
But I mean, this is the thing. Like, does she c-bet? I think game theoretically she probably should c-bet with 100% of her range here, and so I think I should call.
Okay.
The turn's a 9 of diamonds, so it brings in the 3rd diamond.
You have 2 red 8s.
I have 2 red 8s, so I do have an 8 high flush draw. I check. She looks back at her cards, and then she checks. The river, the 5 of diamonds. And so I think given the action now, I think I have to bet. I'm not really sure.
You're betting for value, right?
I definitely. Oh yeah, for sure. Because I mean, she's an under the gun raiser. She probably has big cards, and so 150 kind of serves like as a dual purpose blocking bet. It's going to get. It might get value from her overpairs and
3 kings.
3 kings hands.
Although she bets 3 kings on the turn, probably.
Yeah, I think so most of the time, but you never know. You come up against all kinds of players in this tournament, and it also means I'm probably not going to get raised by anything other than the ace of diamonds or a full house. And she calls and disgustedly turns over 2 black aces.
Wow. So maybe she was 9.
Exactly, and that's what I thought. Like, I think I just actually stepped in one and got lucky. So I thought that has really nothing to do with the previous concept, but I just thought it was a really funny, one of those things that really only shows up in live poker, because if somebody, nobody makes a 25K there under the gun in online poker.
Right.
So it was fine. Next hand is one level later, 612,000 blinds. I opened in the hijack with the 6-4 of diamonds, the exact same opponent, who I now have a little bit more information about.
She hates you.
And hates me because I just cracked her aces. She flat calls and leaves herself.
So you make it 30.
I make it 30,000 at 612, and she calls with only 105K behind. So she started the stack with 135,000. So it is strange. And then a pro in the big blind calls. I think it's like a local Montreal pro, it seems. And he's got a bunch of chips. He's
again. You have the 6-4 of diamonds.
6-4 of diamonds. The turn comes 10-4-4.
The flop. Yep.
Excuse me, the flop is 10-4-4. Yeah, I was using the old super system terminology there. With a flush draw.
So you flop 3 4s, no kicker.
So yeah, 3 floors with a 6, so pretty good flop. It's checked to me. I bet 30K again. The lady jams all in for 105,000. And the big blind now makes it 225,000.
Okay, so this is an isolation almost always, right? This is the pro isolating against...
So you're thinking she has a 10, is what?
No, I don't know what she has. I'm thinking about the big blind. I'm sorry.
No, you're saying you think that the big blind has a 10,
like
quite often.
Of the time,
yeah, I think so too. The big blind is a 10 quite often. It looks like I'm c-betting. I c-bet very small, and yeah, it looks like. But I mean, he can't. He shouldn't have less than a 10 very often, because she'll also have a 10 quite often, and there's no point isolating against somebody who has you beat, right? So he makes it 225,000. So I mean, if you're in my seat, are you preferring a re-raise or a call?
I think I'm getting it in here. I don't think I'm ever folding. I don't see a fold at any point. So I want to get value, I think, from 10s and maybe some weird hand, like weirdly played jacks or something like that. I think I'm probably getting it in there, yeah.
I kind of think all those hands fold if I shove, and that's why I liked it to call. I think I'm basically only going to squeeze out the worst hands if I jam there.
So are you have him covered? He has $1 million. He made it 225.
Yes, he made 225,
you have him covered,
and I'm pretty sure I have him covered at this point. So he's made it 225 with whatever 700,000.
So you're saying you're going you isolate against the hands you beat.
Exactly. I think you get the average selection. I think he'll just continue with his 4 or better, and I think he'll fold.
I mean, there's a flush draw too. I don't know. I mean, a guy puts 225 in. Is he folding very often? Maybe.
I think I would definitely fold the 10. And
sure. Yeah.
I mean, I don't have too many overpairs very often there because of the way the hand played down pre-flop. And maybe he just has pocket 10s, but maybe not. The turns of 5, he bets 235,000.
Okay, so now I'm shoving because now he's got half a stack in the middle, and I'm not folding.
Yeah, but I think he also has. I think he also just has a better 4 than me a lot of the time at this point. I don't think he has 10s anymore.
So are you going to check if he checks on the river? You're going to check behind on a blank?
Well, we'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
We'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
But I kind of think that I think there's a good chance that I think it's very unlikely that he's still continuing to bet with a 10 after I've flatted the 225 cold behind after only putting 30 in the middle. I think he has to basically give me a credit for a 4 at this point.
Dude, this is what we talk about all the time. They have way more error than we ever think they do.
Yeah, but okay, and if I shove, I don't want if he has error, I want him to keep betting.
Okay.
So I decided to call. The river's a 9. He checks. And now I'm really not sure. Like, I think he takes a long time to check. So I think he was at least thinking about betting. I ended up checking behind.
Well, here's the thing. Like, a lot of so if he has a 4 in his hand, a lot of the hands that he has, you push with. Right, because he's going to have 4-5. Oh, 4-5 makes full house.
Yeah, 4-5 is definitely one I was scared about. By the way,
3-4. I guess Ace 4 is a big one. He probably doesn't have like Queen 4 or anything like that.
He could have suited King 4, Queen 4. Why not?
Maybe.
He absolutely could have suited King 4, Queen 4. I would defend there all day long with King 4 and Queen 4 suited.
Yeah. Okay. So
you've got a hijack open, and
I was thinking like a lot of his hands would include straight cards with his 4, and in which case he makes a full house with a 5.
Right. Yeah. So I'm losing to Ace 4, King 4, Queen 4, 5-4, and maybe pocket tens or something weird like that. So that's why I sort of decided to check behind, but I'm not sure that that's right. He ends up turning over 7-4. We basically chop her up, and so I'm not actually.
So here, let's talk about his hand.
Yeah.
Because I think you made a good point about this in the notes here, where you want to talk about his sizing. And on the turn, when you've flatted his check raise on the turn, a whole bunch of given the pre-flop play, a whole bunch of your ranges overbears, right? Yeah. And then if he bets super small there, like you've already shown the propensity to call on the check raise and the flop. I think that's a really small bet on the turn for him. I think he should be betting bigger there.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think I can sort of understand that he didn't want to shove because I mean, my range is uncapped basically at this point. So he's worried about putting his whole tournament line and shoving it all in on the river. But what's he gonna do if he bets that and then he's gonna check fold it on the end? Like that's kind of gross too. So I'm not. I don't know that anybody played this hand brilliantly, but yeah, it's tough hand. It's an interesting one to talk about. The next hand I want to talk about is a sizing related hand, and this isn't actually even a hand that I played, but it was against two players who seemed pretty good, and so one player in the middle position,
this is at 20-40
blinds with a 5K ante. The middle position player opens for 90K with 2 million effective. Really aggressive player on the button, 3 bets to 275,000, so kind of a standard 3-bet size. And now it's folded back to the middle position player, who now 4 bets to 515K.
So this goes back to your point about playing out of position
and laying odds.
Yeah.
So basically, he's made it only 240,000 more, and there's like 900,000 in or over 800,000 in the middle.
So the button has 0 folds.
Exactly, and you've basically priced him in completely. The way this hand goes, it comes ace 5-4 rainbow. Both players check the flop. The turn is a 7, which brings in a backdoor flush draw. They both check again, and the river's an offsuit 3. So the board is ace 7-5-4-3. Basically, any 6
a
makes
deuce
a straight.
Or a 6.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. Any deuce or a 6 makes a straight. And the first player checks, the button jams all in for 1.5 million, and the out of position player tank calls with ace jack.
What?
The button has 7-5, basically turned 2 pair and decided to wait till the river to shove it in. And I mean, the 7-5 suited can't like if you're gonna play that hand for a 4-bet. First of all, I don't love 4-betting with ace jack there pre-flop. Against this player, but if you're gonna do that, if you have a stack of 2 million, you've got to put in like 700,000. You can't
go check on the flop and turn.
That too. I mean, the way this hand was played was not well, but you got to put in like 700,000 before the flop. This, like I said, it was a very aggressive button, and he's been 3-betting a lot of hands, so I understand the desire to 4-bet him with ace jack. You got to make it. You got to make it 700,000 plus. You can't give him this price. You just make him. You make him call with his entire range. He flops a pair. He gets a free card. He makes 2 pair, and then on the river he can play perfectly because you wouldn't have checked a straight to him. So he knows he's golden. And besides the fact that how many 2s and 6s are going to be in your range at this point.
Yeah.
It's just like one of these ones where he cost himself really big by making a click back. One last one on day one, which is sort of interesting. This is also not involved, but goes to this sort of idea of building a stack. So a lot of people were thinking, well, you can fire multiple bullets. Like a lot of the times, pros take a line that sort of increases variance when you can fire a lot of bullets. So you can bring in a big stack onto day 2 and a day 3. So I want to ask you what you were doing here, what you would do. Let's say you were a pro who, you took poker seriously, you play poker for a living, but you've got a good bankroll, and this is what you do. You do MTTs, and you're an MTT specialist. And
I haven't killed myself by then.
So amazingly, it
somehow or another I haven't committed suicide. Okay,
you must have won something lately. So there's re-entry still allowed. In day 1B and day 2. Will the Thrill just got moved to my table. Will Fela, and he opened shoves for $460,000. 10 big blinds. There's a pro in middle position who calls. He seems quite good, and then a super loose guy who's playing a lot of hands shoves for 2.1 million. 50 big blinds. The next seat over is Matt Affleck in the cutoff. He looks down and he sees what he tells us later is ace king. What are you doing there?
Fold.
It's 50 big blinds. Matt eventually did fold, and I talked about this with some other players too, and I think the consensus is that probably, like, from an EV perspective, folding is probably the right play. From a stack building perspective, like, maybe in the sort of overall game you could call there. Funny thing is that it would have worked, Will had 2 6s, and the loose guy, like I said, he was playing very loose, had ace-jack. Just stuffed the 50 big blinds in there with ace-jack.
Spiked to jack.
Yeah, I think he did. I think he did hit either an ace or a jack. I think he hit an ace because Affleck folded.
Yeah.
And so we would have had the best hand.
Oh, okay.
So we move on to day 2. So we got a few more hands early on day 2. We've got a few more hands to go. At 20,000, 40,000, remember I said the blinds roll back, so there's a few hours into the day. We've got 2 black queens, always nice to see in early position. I opened for 100,000. There's a call behind me, and then a what seems like a good pro from Austria, 3 bets to 325,000 on the button.
The Germans.
Are you in your deep here?
Yeah, we are quite deep. So I mean, I think I've got probably 5 million at this point, and he might have me covered.
So you have over 100 big blinds.
Yeah, we've got a bunch. I make it 1.1 million. Again, so it was nice to say I make it 1.1 million. The guy who flattened in between folds, and the Austrian guy calls. The flop comes.
So hang on, I want to ask you about 3-betting there. Is there ever how many
4-betting you mean, or
sorry, 4-betting? Is there any? How often are you flatting versus 4-betting there? What goes into your decision to 4-bet?
It was really close. I mean, I think the fact that I've opened early is generally a reason that I should just call. But the fact that this guy had been 3-betting like an awful lot, and that there's a flat call in between us. So the flat call in between us actually, I think, makes a really big difference, because if I flat, I don't really want to play 2 queens against 3 players or 2 players in position on me for just the small 3-bet. So there's so many times that I fold the best hand, or I get put in a spot with the worst hand.
Right.
So I decided to 4-bet, and if I 4-bet, I'm just happy to win it right now. Like, it's not, queens is great, but it's not really a big, I'm not so excited about it that it's bad. So we got 2.4 in the million. The flop comes king 7-5 with 2 spades, and I have the queen of spades. I actually wrote this down incorrectly. So I actually let out for 800,000. So I let out 1/3 of the pot, which I think is okay for the size, for the size of the pot and for the board texture. And he calls, which obviously I don't like, but it's better than getting raised. The turn is an offsuit 9, and I check now, and he bets a very weird amount. He bets 325,000.
Wow. Like
so
a tenth of the pot, or what?
It's under 1/10 of the pot.
Wow.
And so I was thinking, man, like, I'm just being set up here to get shoved onto the river.
Yeah.
Because what he's doing here is an interesting play where if I call, he basically knows I'm not very strong. I think he means he could think I've ace. My range is essentially kind of capped at ace king. Right, and so if he can put a lot of pressure on me on the river. So like if I have ace king, how happy am I to call a pot size bet on the river?
Not real happy.
Not real happy. The river's a blank. I don't exactly remember what it is. I check, and surprisingly he checks back, and I obviously win.
Yeah.
I kind of think that. I mean, it's easy to see because I would have folded queens to, like, obviously a huge bet. But I kind of think, like, if he's going to bet the 325 in the turn, he's got to bet on the river. Otherwise, all he's doing is just giving me a second chance to bomb it when I do have a good hand.
Right.
So if I did, say, for example, get weirdly out of line with 5s or 9-7 or something like that, now I can put in a big raise and get him off his hand. I think he definitely missed an opportunity to bluff me off a hand as strong as ace king.
Yeah, I should pot.
Yeah. That being said, I'm not sure that I should actually fold ace king if I get
if he does spot. Yeah.
Interesting one though.
Yeah, it is a good one.
And it goes into our sort of weird sizing questions again. You remember, again, note that I made the sizing 1.1. I made it big on purpose because I'm playing against out of position against somebody I felt was a good player.
Okay.
Last hand from day 2, and then we'll kind of go on to day 3 and wrap up the show. But at 60,000, the next level up, I'm opening on the button with ace queen with a stack of now 2 million.
Okay.
and the big stack calls. I've actually taken a bunch of hits at this point, which is why I'm all the way down to 2 million. The big stack has played a lot of hands. He's also not running well. He came to the table with a ton of chips, but he's kind of been losing a lot of small skirmishes to other people. The flop comes down Queen 8-5 Rainbow, which is of course a dream for me.
Yep.
He checks. I bet 125,000, and he calls. So we've got.
So you bet 125 into 330 or something?
330, yeah. So
pretty small.
It's a small bet, but it's also a dry board. So I expect to, you know, when I'm c-betting this board, I don't expect to continue to with a lot. Of course, he's the big blind, so he can have kind of any random trash. The turn is a 7, which
bad
is
card.
What's that?
I think it's a bad card.
It is a bad card because it's attached to both the 8 and the 5. So all of those big blind hands, most of the small cards would be bad for me at that point. I'm not too worried about 2 7s, but yeah, I would agree it's a bad card. He checks rather. I bet 225,000, and now he makes it 650,000. So if I call here, I'm putting in 650K. I've only got about $1 million behind, I think. Yeah, I've got about $1 million behind if I decide to call. It is a really tough spot because he's got basically 8-7, 7-5. He's got the flopped 2 pair, any of the flopped 2 pairs that he won. Yeah, all the gut shot straights that he peeled with. It's not clear to me what's going on here. But I think
this got to be in your folding range. It seems like on the turn for me.
Yeah,
it seems like a bet fold on the turn.
And the reason, like, if the hand ended now. I mean, I think it's a clear call. Like if this was a pure river decision,
more cards can come that are bad.
It's not even more cards that can come are bad. It's that he's going to barrel again on the river, and I don't know if I really want to call. I don't think I can call that barrel, and that's the real tough problem. That's why the sort of the check raise semi bluff is such a powerful weapon when you're in a spot like this. So,
especially when you board coverage.
So I'm thinking
he can wrap that coverage.
So like he can have things like 5-6 and 7. So I'm thinking in my head like 5-6 and 7-6 and 8-6 are all great semi bluffs. They're one pair with a straight draw. I have
8-9.
He expects me to be pretty strong right now. Like he expects me to have a pair at this point. Like he knows I don't have like whatever ace-10.
Sure.
But he's also just betting on the possibility that I can't call down with just a queen here, and I think he gets away with it. So I think at this point there's enough. My thinking is that at this point there's enough combinations of 8-6, 7-6, 5-6, all these kind of pair and straight draws, 9-8, 9-7, all this kind of pair and a straight draw stuff that he could be semi-bluffing with. So I decided to call.
And air.
What's that?
And air.
Yeah, and air. Air is always in the range. Pocket deuces is always in the range. The river's a 4, so now the board is now queen 8-5, 7-4. Any 6 makes a straight, and he bets out 900,000. Yeah. And this is one of these ones where you're like, this is the turning point for the entire tournament.
Yeah, he's either got you. I mean, it's nuts or air almost right at this point, or effective nuts and air, right? So, all the 2 pairs, all the straights that he knows you don't have, or complete air.
Yeah. So
he doesn't have queen 10. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no your kicker doesn't play very. Is what I'm saying.
So here's a question: do you think he still has the 2 pairs?
I think he could just as easily have 2 pairs of straights because he knows he's got your range pretty close.
Does he? I'm not sure because once I've actually called on the turn, I think there are a decent number of 6s in my range. Because I opened the button, right? So we have to know I have ace queen because I didn't open from under the gun. I think.
But you bet called turn.
I bet call turn, but that's I think the reason why I can have a lot of 6s. I mean, I can just as easily have queen 6s. I have ace queen because when I'm opening on the button, right?
Okay.
So and 2 6s, and I can have.
So what you're asking if you would value bet 2 pair here?
That's exactly what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Or sets even.
Or is he gonna? Yeah, maybe you're right. I mean, I think maybe he gives you a chance to bluff. If he has 2 pair, maybe he gives you a chance to bluff in the river.
Right. I think that if he has 2 pair and maybe even some sets, he's going to give me a chance to bluff and maybe even bit scared himself because there's really only one bet left that can go in. So when he bets 900K, this is sort of when I decide to do a little bit of hand reading and just think, well, maybe I can actually start to remove some of these 2 pairs and some of these sets on the range. And basically, I think if I'm going to lose right now, I'm going to lose to 7-6, 5-6, 4-6, 8-6, one of these pairs that was on the turn, and I start running through the combinations, and I just don't have as many combinations as I think actually the bluffs happen. So I actually decide that one pair might actually be good enough. One pair might have actually improved, and I don't know if I'm right, but I decide to call, and I'm very happy when he turns over the 10-9, which is another hand that we didn't think about was potentially in the range because it was a gut shot on the flop and picked up 2 pair on the turn. So it's
I like the way you played it.
Jack 10, Jack. So that was the other thing that was going through my head. The other possibilities of bluffs that you would definitely play this way are Jack 10, Jack 9, and 10-9. So those are all hands that make sense in play, but of course you look brilliant when you make the right read.
Good one.
I get through all day 3. I won't get through too many hands. There are some interesting ones. I'll just kind of get to the most critical one. This is as they used to say when I was a kid, the TSN turning point.
The old Vic Rutter TSN turning point.
Yeah, they used to play that on the Canadian sports networks. 150, 300,000 blinds. That's a big blind.
Crazy.
25,000 ante. We're playing 8-handed at this point. Under the gun opens to 650,000. He plays a decent amount of hands, but he's got 6 million behind. I'm in the next seat with the ace queen of clubs and 11 million of chips. I call. The button is, I think he's a Vietnamese dude. He's got just a ton of chips. All the chips in the world. He calls, and the big blind calls. So we have a really rare 4-way pot. The big blind's a short stack. He only has 4.5 million behind. We have 4 ways for about 3.5 million in the middle.
Okay.
The flop comes king of clubs, 7 of diamonds, 7 of hearts.
King 7-7 rainbow, and you have the ace queen of clubs.
I have the ace queen of clubs for 3 to a royal, as the video poker guys might say.
Yes.
It's check to me.
Now the video poker guys would keep the 7s.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, I've got ace king.
You don't
queen,
keep 3 to a royal. You keep the 7s.
That's true. That's a good point. Well, maybe there's a big progressive going on. Kessler's listening to this, going, "What is wrong with you?" Both guys check to me, which is a little bit surprising. I decided to take a little stab at it. I bet 1/3 pot, 1.25 million, and the button folds, the big stack folds, the button calls, and under the gun calls. The turn's a 10 of clubs to give me 4 to a royal, and it's check to me. And I have an interesting decision here. I think both guys are marked for a king kind of relatively often in this circumstance.
Yeah.
Now, of course, they could have 7s as well. And so I'm not really sure what to do. I decided to move all in.
I feel like you're not. Yeah. I mean, I guess it depends on what you think their calling frequencies. Like you've played with these guys for a while.
Whether they will call with
how
kings,
apt they are to call with kings.
So when I flat here under the gun, it's obviously very strong, and I can I can reasonably rep aces. It's actually easier to rep aces than ace king for me here.
I think you're repping some 7s. Some 7 suited,
Yeah, not too many. It's hard because I am in early position, so I don't know how many 7s I really have. I can and king queen suited, I think, is another possibility. So aces, king queen suited. I mean, I think the big blind has a king an awful lot of the time.
Yeah.
And I'm less sure about under the gun, but I think it's possible that he also has a king as well.
The big blind can have a bunch of weak kings too.
Yeah, the big blind, because he's the big blind, can definitely have a bunch of weak kings. And so I'm honestly not in love with my jam either. I'm kind of basically just repping aces and hoping that they're willing to fold kings, which is a big parlay. On the other hand, I do have a really big draw, right? So I'm going to make a straight or a flush a third of the time on the river. So even when I do get called, it's not. Yeah, and an ace might be good as well. It's actually not that much of a disaster. So they both called. As it turns out,
you jammed.
I went all in for the big blind's 4.5. Both guys called. The big blind had 9-7, so he did have a 7, and the other guy called with 2 aces, the exact hand I was trying to.
You need a club,
and so I didn't. I needed a club or a jack, and I hit neither. It was a king on the end. The interesting thing is, king on the end. If the turn had checked through, I potentially could have stolen it on the river.
When the king.
That's the crazy thing. If I go all in on the river and the board is now king, 7, 7,
aces 10, and the 7 might fold.
Yeah, I might be able to get them both out. So there's a definite bunch of ways I play this hand.
Get out of the trap, kid.
You get out of the.
I definitely not in love with the way I play the hand. It's not the worst thing I've ever done at a poker table. I think 3 days I played pretty good poker. I kind of wish I had that one back. That's a rough one. If I definitely took different lines, things might have went out differently for me in this tournament. But that's what it is.
All right, so that's going to wrap it up for the show today. Thanks so much. Well, first of all, again, with the video podcast has been great. I can't wait to get this out to everybody. Hopefully they like it.
I think somebody was flying a drone out there while you were talking.
Is that what that was? I was trying to look around and I could not figure out what that was.
Good video stuff. All right, thanks to Mike Noori for joining us. Thanks to Aaron for doing the video work, and everybody here at the Playground Casino for making our stay as fantastic as it was. And thanks to you guys for making the trip out to Montreal, and to you at home listening and you watching as well. Thanks so much. We're going to come back next week. Hopefully we're going to continue with the video podcasts, and in maybe a different form, because this is pretty intricate with all the different cameras and editing that needs to be done. We might go do the Facebook Live or some sort of Google Hangout or some other way to approach it, but we'll give it a shot. It's been fun doing the video cast as well, and we will talk to you next week.